What are the phone protections the FCC mandated in 2024? Okay, I'm going to be honest here. I don't even know who the FCC is. So,
A Federal Communications Commission. They make
okay.
laws about radio, television, phone, cable, that kind of stuff.
All right. Hopefully they found a way to make our calls a little more secure is what I'm going to hope.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah,
Maybe.
sort of, I
Wishful
suppose.
thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Awesome. Okay, so what is a SIM swap attack? This sounds bad, so I'm curious to know how often these attacks happen. Just so you know.
Yeah. And I didn't pull the numbers on that. It's not, this one is more about some other things that we'll get into, kind of an excuse to talk about it. Because
Okay.
the numbers are not super high.
Okay. Okay, good. That makes me feel good. So, gonna get some insight. My guess is it'll help us be aware of security in a new line, you know? Okay. What is a port attack? Port out attack. Okay. I hear this. I immediately heard of a scam years ago to where they were hacking your phones via these ports that you'd use for charging, like at hotels or public places that you could charge your
Oh, yeah.
phone. Um, is that what we're talking about here? Something like that?
No, this is very much related. It's very similar to the SIM swap attack. But the attack you're talking about does exist. I'm not sure on the frequency again of it, but think of it like, when you plug in your phone to your computer,
Mm-hmm.
it's not just for charging, it's for data transfer, right, between your phone and your computer. And
Right.
so that's the idea. Those, instead of just providing power, it would do a data transfer. And so it would be trying to extract data from your device.
Oh, dang.
That's the idea.
Okay. Okay. I'm excited for this next question because I've often asked myself this question. What is your second most important online account?
Hmm.
Based off of our conversation, I'm going to assume it has something to do with our phone. um,
Right.
you know, so yeah, uh, I'm excited to know what should be that second area we should start focusing our security on. So I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, and I think eventually we'll do an episode where we walk through the whole breakdown of, account priorities.
Excellent. I love it. I'm excited to hear. Okay, well, welcome back and thanks for tuning in. I'm Nick, and this is Super Simple Security Principles. Listen each week and learn how to think, not what to think. This is episode 50, two new locks for your phone number. All right, I'm excited. Two new locks for your phone number. Where do we start?
Well, so last week we talked about some phone number safety as
Yep.
well with the breach and all the spying, and so we're talking about phone number safety again, but in a very different variety. Um, so I just want to remind us too. Part of the motivation of this is because email, we've talked about often, as a master key for our accounts. Our phone number is also something of a master key. And specifically, it's often the only form of two factor authentication that we're offered.
Yeah.
So that's
Text message.
yeah, exactly. Yep. Text message to enter in the code. And you asked about the frequency of the attacks, and they're pretty small in number relatively. They have been slowly growing, both in frequency and severity, and they're used as part of bigger attacks.
Okay.
And yeah, well, we'll talk about that more, but the FCC anyway decided that they wanted to add some new rules about it
Okay.
in 2024 to help protect against these attacks. And again, most of these attacks are very targeted, and they're going to be against businesses or influential individuals in businesses anyway. But
Okay.
anyway, I'm hopeful about these rules that they're going to help protect against these attacks. I say hopeful partly because it depends on exactly how the rules are implemented.
Okay.
Because we've got this document from the FCC, which is long, painfully long. I've looked at it, didn't read through it all, but it's the government, so you can imagine.
Right.
But of course, how that translates into practice is a totally different story. So it's pretty new. A lot of it came online near the end of 2024. But anyway, our focus is just going to be on a very small piece of that legislation, what I think of as 2 new locks. And I do recommend personally for everyone to turn them on. And
Okay.
each of the locks acts as a layer of protection against those 2 types of attacks, the SIM swap and the port out attack.
Nice.
So
we can, with 2, we can eliminate these 2 attacks.
yeah, or at least, yeah, exactly. Add a layer of protection, hopefully eliminate them. But yeah, that's the idea. Yep.
All right. Yeah, probably not bulletproof, but at least add some layers of security from it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not trying to be nitpicky on the word there. I just dodge eliminate. I mean, I like
Right.
we talk about layers a lot, right?
Right.
And
No.
so that's all.
Yeah.
But so we're going to talk about what those attacks are and
Okay.
how the new locks protect you. But the really, really quick version, if we've talked about credit freezes,
Yeah.
they're a lot like that.
Okay.
We talked about that in episode 29. And so, anyway, the concept is very similar. So, the first attack, SIM swap, and this is the one that gets talked about the most. So, real quick though, what is a SIM? It stands for Subscriber Identity Module. And I don't expect anybody to remember that, but the subscriber is the most important part. It's a little chip that gets put into your phone that tells your cell phone company, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, whatever, who you are.
Yep.
And these days, there actually is often no longer an actual physical SIM card. They've just made eSIMs, a digital version of it. But the concept is still the same. There's something associated with that phone that when you're making phone calls, they know it's you making that phone call.
Okay.
And so a SIM swap is actually a normal thing that happens when, say, you upgrade your phone. You need to move the SIM from your old phone to your new phone.
Yep.
So a SIM swap attack, all it is when the hacker does that on your behalf, and instead of, of course, they move it from your phone to one of their phones. And that's all it really is.
Gotcha.
But it behaves just like you upgraded, so that means then they're getting all your messages and your phone calls. And the good news is, in a way at least, is unlike the last episode we talked about where it's a spying situation, right? So they could see your text message and phone calls and you didn't know about it. Well,
Right.
with a SIM swap, your phone stops getting the phone calls and text messages. So, I mean, you may not notice immediately, right? If you don't try to make a call or send a message and you're not expecting one, but it's not going to be long before you figure out that your phone no longer works.
Right.
And so, anyway, that's what a SIM swap attack is.
Gotcha. Okay. It makes sense. Like I still do. I get my phones from Apple directly, right? And so I'm super familiar with throwing in that SIM card, or, you know, I haven't had the digital one yet. I'll have to,
Oh,
yeah,
really? You've had to still do the physical chip?
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That said, I don't upgrade my phone all that often.
Right. Likewise. Yeah. So the second attack, the port out attack, is basically the same, except that instead of transferring the service to a new device within the same carrier, you might be using the same device, but moving it to a new carrier. Right. So if
Oh,
you're switching from AT&T to Verizon, for example, whatever.
yeah, yeah,
So again, something we might do ourselves, obviously way more rarely than, upgrading your phone. But anyway, that's the idea. So, but in either case, the objective for the hacker is to get control of your phone number so that they can
yeah.
then hack into your other accounts because they can receive the two-factor authentication codes, for example, and that sort of thing.
Okay.
The next thing that we need to talk about is how these attacks actually happen. And it's really kind of crazy, in my opinion, that it's even possible. Because, so if you're listening and you're like, what? That doesn't make any sense. Why would anybody ever let this happen? Well, I'm with you. But it's been happening. And you can read
Okay.
events in the news. You can go search, news for SIM swap. It's not, it's not nothing on the scope of data breaches or whatever, but it's happening. So, and all it boils down to is a scammer. They call your phone company and basically they share enough personal information that they've collected from you from these data breaches or whatever else, and trick them
Yeah.
into believing that they're you and that you're switching your phone service to a new phone.
Okay.
And that's the whole of it, really. Um,
Really?
yeah.
So that's what they're doing. Like they've gathered enough data to
Mm-hmm.
basically call in the phone company, fake to be you,
Yep.
say, "Hey, we're going to change carriers,"
Or just
and you're
upgrade
none the
phone.
wiser, or just
Yeah.
upgrade phone. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. The upgrading the phone is a lot more common just because it's an easier sell. They're not gonna, like, they're happy to have you upgrade the phone. If you're trading carriers, they're like, oh, they're gonna probably try to convince you to stay and all this nonsense. So
Yeah.
it doesn't happen nearly as often, from at least from what I've found online about it. But so if we're talking about protections, though, the question, and we get this about things in general, is like, so there's all this information of mine that's supposed to be private but now is publicly known because of these data breaches, right? So
Right.
what
Right.
what can we do about that? We can't you know get rid of it. There are
Right.
some data scrubbing services you can kind of try to hide and remove some of it, but a lot of it's just going to be out there and there's nothing you can do about it, right?
Right.
So the answer, in my mind, for this case and many others, is basically it means you need to add a layer of protection that doesn't depend on that now publicly known information.
Right. Right.
It also, that layer of protection shouldn't depend on the customer service person not being tricked by the scammer.
Right. 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 That's a little, somebody that doesn't know you at all is fielding a call to try and determine whether you are who you say you are or not. If this is going to happen to me, I don't like those odds, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's well, and I mean the thing is that's the way, there's so many systems where you call up and you have to prove who you are.
Right. Right.
Be, because I mean it's just like logging in a website. You got to prove who you are there, and they have these phone systems, and you got to call and prove who you are there. And a lot of time that's just been based on information, and it's turned out to be, especially these days, that's just not the greatest way to authenticate people.
Right. Right.
And so sometimes now you have pins or other things, and we'll talk about that more another day. But anyway, it's a problem, and these locks at least help with that. They can potentially, if they're handled correctly, add this layer of protection that we just described.
Okay.
And I say potentially because basically this key question is, in my mind, is let's say we have the locks on for our account and the scammer calls in and somehow convinces them that they, yes, I turn my locks on and I can't figure out how to turn it off. Can you turn it off for me or something?
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Will the phone carriers, are they going to decide to let their customer service folks turn those locks off if the scammer is convincing enough? I hope not. And it's
Right.
early days, so we'll see. But I'm hopeful because the idea behind the locks is simple. If they're on, then we can't change devices. We have to turn it off just temporarily when we upgrade. And, that's it. But it
Okay.
can be this layer. It is potentially very powerful because that's a pretty huge obstacle for the hacker compared to just impersonating you on the phone. It's a whole different set of things they have to do. They've got to first
Right.
hack your online account in order to turn off those locks. And assuming you're using a good password with that account. Anyway, that's part
Right.
of the premise, right? You want to make sure that account's as unhackable as possible. And actually, one thing I found in the course of my research that with AT&T, for example, the lock is actually done it's not associated with your online account. It's associated on the device itself within the AT&T app. And so,
Sounds like a pretty good way to go.
yeah, it ups the ante even a little bit more, right? Because then they'd have
Right.
to like hack your device, hack into the app kind of thing, and unlock it there. And so I'm like, that sounds really good. Um, the only downside to that, and I would happily take it though, is say you have your lock on, and you have AT&T, you locked it inside the app, you lose your device or it breaks, then from what I read online, you have to go into the store, show your identification, prove who you are in person in a store, right? But that seems like a pretty good trade-off to me.
I was gonna say I'd do that. I mean, if you lost your phone, you broke your device, you're more likely than not going into the store anyways. Why not just have it be customary to prove you are who you say you are while there?
Yeah. Well, a lot of us, I mean, like I haven't gone into a store in a long time. I mean, you're a little more old school on that front. Like, I hate to break it to you, buddy, because I haven't ordered a phone. I've ordered my phones online for a fair while now, but I
I order mine online. I just have gone into the stores to, yeah.
no, that's cool. I'm just giving you a hard time, and there are plenty of people who do. I'm sure. I mean, those stores are active, but anyway. So the main thing, though, I think I want to emphasize here in terms of the strength of these locks
Yeah.
is it's going to depend on the specific carrier. How hard are they going to make it for the hacker to turn off these locks? And so we're just going to have to wait and see a little bit. And I suspect that will evolve over time. But, and I think, it seems like we're on the same page on this one is there's really not a whole lot of downside to turning them on. Uh,
Right.
there's very minimal initial effort, ongoing. You're already going through the process of upgrading your phone. Yes, you'd have to turn it off in order to do that temporarily. Adds a tiny bit to a rare event. All in all, it's a no-brainer decision in my mind.
Right. Right.
So then let's talk about how you actually turn them on. And of
Yeah.
course, we talked about their settings, in your account. So that's basically what it boils down to. But it's interesting because it varies actually more than I expected by carrier because the rules from the FCC don't specify the name, so they all have their own kind of brand names, including number lock, account lock, SIM protection, port out protection. And then the most unusual one is with AT&T again. They're a standout in a number of ways. They combine the locks. You can't actually turn them off individually. They just combine them into one that I think they called a secure account lock or something like that.
Okay.
And like we talked about with them, you do it in the app. And in most of them, you can do it in the app, but it's basically the equivalent of logging in to their website and turning it on there as well.
Okay.
So that's I'll probably create a post on the forum just to break down a little bit of details, at least for the bigger companies.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah. The one aspect that I looked for but couldn't really. I don't have an account with all the carriers. Of course, it's harder than some because I only have one one cell phone. But
Right.
I was curious to see if any carriers turn the lock on by default. Mine, Verizon, definitely doesn't. They didn't even really advertise the existence of this new lock to me. I found out about it because I try to keep abreast of all these things, but it wasn't just like as a regular consumer, Verizon told me or anything, right?
Right.
And based on my general experience, what little I could find, my guess is that the locks are off by default for most, if not all, people and carriers. So
you might have to check out our links to figure out how to do that.
yeah. Yep. So the final point that I want to make is, and this goes back to the last question, our last opening question is about what's our second most important online account, and it's obviously something we haven't talked a lot about, but I want to start emphasizing more, and that's your phone account.
Yeah.
You don't even actually, when you get a phone, initially you can get a phone number without even setting up the account. So I recommend, not only do you set it up, but you treat it in all the ways we've talked about with email, of having a good unique password, unique username, 2FA if you can, although a lot of times you can't because phone is so often the 2FA. Like I couldn't with mine. Yeah. So, because the thing is, even though both the attacks we've talked about today and other things, like your phone and your phone number are in general harder to take over than your email account.
Yeah.
It's also a lot more valuable in some ways, right? Because companies assume they know it's harder to do that, and so it's a stronger proof in some ways.
Yeah.
And if somebody got access to your phone account, they may not be able to do some of these things. But anyway, it's the more I've thought about it, the more I consider it to be the second most important, just because it can also unlock with being the universal kind of 2FA, unlock your accounts a lot as well. So coupled with email.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Makes
kind of stumbled my way through that.
No, yeah, makes sense.
Okay.
The lock seems like a no-brainer. Like trying to get those two locks put on, because like you said, it's only when you're upgrading a phone or changing carriers that you would need to worry about unlocking it.
Yep.
And to add that layer of security.
Yeah.
Seems. So have we reached that point in time? Are we
Yep.
to our call to action?
Yep.
Let's hear it. What do you got for us?
Well, you can guess it. Just go and turn on these two locks. Visit the forum post, linked in the show notes, for if you run into any troubles finding it, and ask me any questions that come up. I'll also add this, and we've talked about this kind of throughout, but I just want to emphasize the point of this episode was not to make anybody afraid.
Right.
The attacks aren't super common. The consequences are significant if they do happen, but more, I want to be part of the reason the attacks don't become more common. I want to make
Right.
sure that if you're listening to this, you're not one of those victims.
Right.
The effort to add it, as we've talked about, is really minimal. The money cost is zero. So
Right.
just do it.
Seems like a no-brainer.
Yep.
Yeah, let's not have these attacks become commonplace. Let's take care of it now.
Yeah, let's stamp them out completely. Make them, a thing we hardly ever hear about again, because they just don't happen anymore. I think this is a kind of case where we really could ultimately, if can't all do it individually, but if the carriers do their part, and I don't know, I see no reason why it can't go away entirely ultimately.
Nice.
So we'll see.
Awesome. Well, do I get to let the listeners know a little secret?
Yeah, tell them about the next episode.
So we're starting a series on home network security. Look, this is a big deal. We've all experienced added security at work. This is exactly what I thought. Like, we've all experienced that, We've got different passwords or maybe different ways of logging into things, that added layer. But now we're going to talk about your home security, your home network security. It's time we address the simple hows, what, and why we need to address our home security network, I'm guessing. That said, don't worry, I know our Master Guardian well, and we're going to keep it simple. But episode 1, we will introduce a metaphor we're going to use throughout the series. So we like using metaphors because it's simple, a little bit easier to understand. So yes, I'm pumped. Okay, be ready. Home network security, here we come.
Yeah, I think I'm looking forward to it.
Me too.
Gotta do this too.
I was early. Okay, that's our super simple show today. If you're not a member of the IHP Academy already, please come join us for free. Stop searching the whole internet for answers and never knowing who to trust. Ask us instead. We made it super simple to find us, and it only takes 2 minutes to sign up. Just visit helpmegetsafe.com. Enter your name and your email. You're in. You can also find the link in our show notes. Thank you for joining us, and make it a great day. Bye-bye.